Hi, welcome to Starz Recapped. Today, I am going to explain the Part 3 of the American fantasy television series called The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, which was released in the year 2022. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Now, as you know by now, there are humans living in the south, in Middle-earth. Dwarves lives in the mountains, and the elves lives in Lindon, and they all tremble at the name of Sauron because he is coming back. He will plunge this world into darkness so that he can make it his own way, for which it had created a massive army of orcs centuries ago. But orcs were originally elves, who came under the influence of dark powers and were transformed from elves to orcs. And now they are part of Sauron's army. But orcs cannot come into direct sunlight because they get burnt by the sun. That's why they've been building tunnels underground for years, all of which were opening into a volcano. But an elf named Galadriel had already sensed this danger. That is why she came to the south with a huge army from Númenor, along with which the queen of the country of Númenor was also there. And these people arrived in time and saved their human brothers living in the south. But by then, Adar had got hold of Sauron's sword, with the help of which he forced the water of the mountains into the volcano by passing it through his tunnels, due to which the volcano erupted, and destruction, fire and darkness spread all around, and many people died in this devastation. And now, at the beginning of its third part, we see that when the Galadriel regains consciousness, she finds only ashes, destruction, and corpses all around. Galadriel gets up and immediately starts looking for his companions. But then she meets Theo, who is looking for his mother. And then both of them together start searching for the survivors. And here, the Queen of Númenor is also trying to rescue her remaining Númenor's soldiers from this devastation. Then she sees that a roof is about to fall. That's why the Queen and her soldiers go inside the house and try to evacuate the people from there. But they take the people out. But then, in this fire, the roof falls on the Queen and her soldiers. While here in the mountains we see an elf named Elrond come to speak to the king of Khazad-dûm Kingdom, which is the king of dwarfs, about a mystical stone called Mithril, and it tells them that darkness is engulfing our sacred tree. If we don't stop that, darkness will spread across the entire world, and our entire elf race will be extinct. And if the elves become extinct, the rest of the species will soon be plunged into darkness forever. And that is Sauron's goal, now that he's back. The king of dwarfs sends Elrond away and tells his son Durin, "I regret that your elf friend's entire race will become extinct. However, if we extract this mysterious stone Mithril from our minds and give it to these elves, perhaps they can be saved. But I think we should not do this, because whatever is all happening by God's will. That's why we shouldn't tamper with it." Hearing this, Durin angrily and sadly tells his father, "You can't do this, Dad. How can you let an entire species go extinct?" But the king says plainly, "The one who created this world has already written the fate of the elves centuries ago. If we disobey him, then this kingdom of ours will also be destroyed." Durin tries hard to persuade his father, but he does not change his mind. On the other hand, in Middle-earth, besides elves, humans, and dwarfs, some dwarfs-type people also live in the forests, who are called Harfoots. They are short in height, but they are not like the dwarfs. These people live the life of nomads in the forests. One of these girls, a Harfoot named Nori, is very brave and fearless. She always longs to see the world outside the forest. She feels she is not meant for these forests. That is why she often crosses the border and goes out. Here, in the mountains, Durin goes to his wife Disa and tells her about his father's insistence. Disa angrily says, "Your father has grown old. You should become the king now." Meanwhile, Elrond arrives and says to Durin, "It's all right, friend, you did your best." Hearing this, Durin begins to cry because despite his wishes, he is unable to save his friend, the elf. Elrond says, "I must go to Lindon soon and tell my majesty all this, because if the elves are no more, the whole of Lindon will be gone." Saying this, Elrond gives the mystical stone to Durin and leaves from there. Durin throws the stone away, crying in anger and sadness. But then he sees that the leaf of the sacred tree gets healed as he comes near that stone. This meant that this stone could indeed save the elves' sacred tree and the entire elf race, whereas here we see a fireball falling from the sky into the forest. And as Nori walks near it, she sees that there is a stranger lying in the middle of the ground, but Nori begins to feel a different kind of attraction toward it. That is why she comes down even after her friend refuses. And when it gets close to it, the stranger awakens, causing rocks to fly in all directions. But soon it calms down and becomes unconscious. And then Nori says to her friend, Hurry up, we have to get him out of here. We can't leave him like this or the wolves will tear apart and kill him. So both of them bring him to their hideout and hide him. And then Nori says to her friend, my heart is telling me that there must be some reason for this meeting. While here in the south we see Theo and Galadriel hiding from the orcs. Then Theo asks, why did they do this? To which Galadriel says, so that orcs can build their world here. Now we have to sneak out and get out of here. Because now neither do we have enough strength nor enough army to fight them and drive them away from here. The war is over now and we must retreat. While here we see that all the soldiers of Númenor are going back to their camp. And their captain's face also looked very gloomy, because there was no news of his son yet. Maybe he is dead. But still the captain immediately comes to the queen of the Númenor, for that is his duty. But he is stunned after seeing her, because due to that falling of roof and flame of the fire, the power of her eyes has gone, the queen has become blind, and she has lost her eyesight. Meanwhile, Nori arrives in the forest and sees that the stranger has awakened, but as she gets close to it, the stranger becomes enraged, causing even the trees to bend. But Nori quickly calms him down and tells him, I'm not a threat to you. Consider me your friend. My name is Nori, and from now on, you will not harm me. For now, take this and eat something. And here in the south, Theo tells Galadriel, my mother and everyone else are dead. So where are we going now? To which Galadriel says, the Númenor army has set up a military camp across the mountaintop. So all the army and people will also be going there, and we will also have to go there. And maybe your mother might have also gone there. But now we have to be careful, because the sunlight is no longer reaching the ground. That's why the orcs will now be roaming around freely, even during the day. Whereas here in the jungle we see that all the Harfoots peoples are very happy in their nomadic life. And his only catchphrase is, he who walks with the caravan will never be left alone. Then we see Nori's parents, who are very worried about their daughter, because she often breaks the laws here. While here in the south we see the army of Númenor heading towards its camp. And then the captain tries to ask the queen again, are you really not able to see anything? To which she replies, don't let anyone know, just keep going straight. We have to keep the morale of our army high. And then as the night falls in the jungle, we see the leader of Harfoots saying to his people, another season of ours has passed in this jungle. Here both our mind and body were satisfied. But now we have to leave this place and go to a new place. That's how we live our lives. But then we see that the stranger also arrives here searching for Nori. And now all of them also come to know about this stranger. While here in the south, Galadriel and Theo have to spend their night under the trees. But then they start hearing orcs' voices, as a convoy of orcs is passing by them. That's why both of them remain lying here quietly. Then one orc starts getting suspicious, but then the other orc tells him, let's go from here, don't waste time. After which Galadriel tells Theo, we will leave from here in the morning. While here in the mountains we see that Darin and Elrond are digging for that mysterious stone, hiding from the king here. And after digging for a while they reach that mysterious stone. And here, much more than they had imagined, that mysterious stone exists, whose name is Mithril. But then the king of dwarfs also arrives here, and he gets very angry with them. And he immediately expels Elrond from his estate. That's why Elrond feels dejected and sits outside. While inside, Darin tells his father, what's the use of my greatness if I can't save my own friend? Elrond is like my own brother. At this his father gets angry and says, how dare you to the dig without my permission? You have disobeyed not your father, but your king. That is why his father, the king of dwarfs, take off his medal and say, now you are no longer worthy of it. And here in the forest, the Harfoots are also set out on their next journey with their caravan. And that stranger also joins their caravan along with them. While here in the south we see that the captain and the rest of his army also reach their camp. The captain sets his son's horse free because it was becoming quite restless. And then Galadriel and Theo also reach this camp. Then when Theo comes inside and looks around, there are only injured soldiers lying everywhere. Then his mother Bronwyn comes and immediately hugs him, and both of them are very happy to see each other. And then it sees that Arondir is also alive. While outside we see the captain telling the queen, all our preparations are complete. We can leave in an hour to go back to our country home, Númenor. Then Galadriel also arrives there, and the captain, looking at Galadriel angrily, says, Queen, we should leave this land as soon as possible. But the queen says, we came here from our country Númenor to the far south, at the behest of the Galadriel, to save our other human brothers. We failed in this, but those devils have started a big war. Therefore, I, Queen of Númenor, declare that Númenor will soon return here with its entire army, and we will not rest until we destroyed these devils. To which Galadriel says, then the elves will also be ready with their army. And then soon after, the Queen of Númenor, along with her remaining army, returns to Númenor by sea. And here Bronwyn also tells Galadriel that we have to go away from here with the remaining humans, to which Galadriel says, now I too will have to go back to Lindon to tell all this to my king. But when she returns to camp, it sees that her human friend Halbrand is in very bad condition. I tried everything I could to treat him, but he just wouldn't heal, says Bronwyn. To which Galadriel says, I must take him to Lindon quickly. The elves there can treat him. And then Galadriel says to Halbrand, you just became the king of humans, and now, in your wounded state, you must come with me. To which Halbrand says, we will definitely return here. While here in the forest, we see that some strange witches also come to the same place where the stranger had fallen, and they are also looking for the same stranger. She also has similar powers as the stranger, and here Halbrand tells his people before leaving, I will return here soon. And then Galadriel gives his sword to Theo, and takes Halbrand with her to Lindon. While up here in the mountains we see the king of dwarfs, who returns the leaf of the elves' sacred tree back into the mithril mine. Seeing this, Morgoth's fire demon becomes enraged, because it was he who had tried to destroy that tree. And then down south we see Adar saying to the orcs, my children, you need not fear the sun anymore. Now this is our land. Now the sunlight will never fall on the southern land. That's why all the orcs can now move around everywhere here, even during the day. This was Adar's real goal, to turn the south of Middle-earth into orc land. That is why now in the south there will be orcs, not humans. And from now on it will be known as South Moder, where orcs lives. And here in the forest we see that these Harfoots nomads are busy arranging for their food. But then the wolves come here and they all run away and hide in one place behind a tree. Then the stranger also arrives here, and as soon as these wolves attack, the stranger throws them away with his powers, due to which the wolves get scared and run away. But the stranger also gets injured in this attack. That is why it goes to water to heal itself. Then Nori also comes to him with a paste, but she sees that her spells begin to freeze the stranger's hand, and as soon as Nori touches it, it gets affected as well, and she moves away from the stranger and falls. As soon as the stranger comes near Nori, Nori gets scared and runs away from here. Who is this stranger? While here in another elf kingdom, E-region, we see Elrond, who tells to Celebrimbor that if we didn't get the mythal from dwarves, how are we going to save the elf? Because that's all the mythal we have. Then Galadriel also arrives here with Halbrand, and she tells them that my friend's condition is very bad. We have to treat him soon. And then soon the elves start treating him. And then Galadriel tells his best friend Elrond that he is the king of the humans of the south, whose name is Halbrand, and he is who saved me in the sea. And only after that, I found some signs with him, which belong to the king of the south, due to which I felt that he is the real king of the south. And so, at my behest, the Queen of Númenor has also declared him the king of the people of the south. Hopefully, he is the real king of the humans who lives in the south. While here in the forest, we see that the witches also come very close to the stranger while searching for him. And then she comes near a tree and starts looking for traces of that stranger. But Nuri and her friends keep watching secretly. But by now, the witches have already discovered the stranger. That is why they start going to him. But then Nuri comes and says, wait, he has not gone that way, but the other way. But those witches immediately disappear and appear behind her. But then Nuri's parents also arrive here and tell them, if my daughter gets even a scratch, I will burn you witches to ashes. But one of the witch takes away their fires and burns their entire tribe huts and tents to ashes. And these poor people are so helpless and unable to do anything, they keep crying after seeing their houses burning. And then here we see that after Halbrand recovers, he came inside the Celebrimbor workshop, and he says to Celebrimbor, my teacher never got tired of praising you. Due to which Celebrimbor also becomes very impressed with this. And then Halbrand says to him, I have never seen stones like these in my life, and this metal is rare. To which Celebrimbor says, that's not enough. But Halbrand says, have you tried mixing it with other metals? To which Celebrimbor says, that would make it lose its unique powers. But Halbrand says, its powers can be enhanced by mixing metals correctly, because where I lived, precious metals were very scarce. That is why we used to mix different metals and make new metals, which were better than the previous ones. That's why there might be some metal that can combine with it and enhance its powers. To which Celebrimbor says, I never thought of that. Your suggestion is quite interesting. Whereas here in the jungle we see that these Harfoots people do not lose courage even after their houses are burnt, and says, we will make a fresh new start, but first we have to save the stranger, because now he is also a part of our family, and we Harfoots never betray our own people by giving up. That's why all of them together set out to find that stranger. And here we see that these people call their elf king and tell him their idea, To which Celebrimbor says, we will shape it into a round shape, so that the light falling on it gets concentrated in a circumference. But King says that it would be very dangerous to give such power to any one person. And anyway, we don't have any time left because ever since that volcano erupted, the leaves of our sacred tree have been falling. And when the last leaf falls from that tree, all the elves will be gone and finished. That is why King says, we have to leave Middle-earth as soon as possible and go to our world Valinor. Otherwise, we will all be destroyed. But Celebrimbor says to the king, just give me one chance because it has very amazing powers. We are going to create a superpower that is not just limited to the body but is beyond that. To which King replies, there is no time now. That is why King says, we are leaving from here. But Elrond also goes after the king. And here Galadriel becomes suspicious, because this was the line Adar had said about Sauron, that Sauron is seeking a power that is beyond the body, but beyond that. And when Galadriel asks Celebrimbor about this, Celebrimbor says, I guess I heard it from Halbrand since he was with me. That's why Galadriel's suspicion now falls directly on Halbrand. And here Elrond tries to convince the king that, just give me 3 months, we will create that power. To which the king says, everything is over. But Elrond says, there is still hope. Only hope can keep us going. That is why King agrees. And then we see that these people soon get busy in building that superpower, because now the work of 3 centuries has to be completed in these 3 weeks. But now Galadriel also starts looking at them with suspicion. That is why she says to the historian here, I want complete information about the lineage of the King of the South, whatever is present here. And remember, no one should know about this. And just as he leaves, Halbrand arrives and tells Galadriel, I'll always be grateful to you. I will always remember this favor of yours. And here in the forest, we see that the stranger starts remembering Nori after seeing her apple. So he starts going towards her, but then he gets a glimpse of Nori. That's why he runs after her. But as soon as he falls, Nori takes its apple and runs away. And then the stranger follows. But then he sees that it isn't Nori, but the same witch in her form. And they surround him and say to him, we are at your service, King Sauron. And then they succumb to him. While here we see that after a long sea voyage, the Queen of Númenor finally returns to Númenor. Meanwhile, an explosion takes place in Celebrimbor's workshop, and Celebrimbor says, this mythal metal is very stubborn. It is not ready to mix with any other metal. That's when Galadriel says, maybe we're putting too much pressure on this. To which Halbrand says, we should allow the metals to bond to each other on their own. Then the historian also comes to the Galadriel. That is why she goes out from here. And now it turns out that Halbrand was lying. Halbrand then arrives, and Galadriel tells him, there is no king of the south. His dynasty died out years ago, which means you stole his mementos from somewhere, leading me to believe that you are the king of the south. But now your lie has been caught. Tell me your real name. To which Halbrand replies, I've been called many different names over thousands of years. And then Galadriel realizes that this is Sauron. Sauron then traps Galadriel in its memories and escapes. And by the time Elrond comes and picks her up, Sauron has fled. That means Halbrand was Sauron. That's why Galadriel immediately comes to Celebrimbor and says, Halbrand is out of here. And none of us will ever have anything to do with him again. And now we will divide that superpower not into 1, but into 3 places, so that balance is maintained. And remember, the power we generate today will belong solely to the elf. No one could even touch this powers. Then Celebrimbor says, I'll need premium gold for this, which is only found in your brother's dagger. Give it to me, because true art demands great sacrifice. While here in the forest we see the witches say to the stranger, my master, as your powers awaken, the veil over your memories will be removed, and we are here to serve you. You fell from the stars because you are great. Fire obeys your commands, and every particle of the earth trembles with fear when they see you. Your powers are great. Soon you will learn to control your powers. And then every living creature in this world will become your slave, and you will be known as the great Emperor Sauron. That's when his powers become uncontrollable. That's why the witches knock him unconscious and say, when the time comes, he will learn to control his powers. Tie him up for now. But by now the Harfoots have also reached here, and they are hiding and looking for an opportunity. That is why they make noises to distract the attention of these witches, due to which both the witches go to the other side. And Nori comes from behind and starts freeing the stranger. But then Nori's mother finds the stranger lying in the bushes. That means the other one is not the stranger, but a witch. But in all this, the leader of the Harfoots also gets seriously injured. And then they grab Nori as well. And the witch comes in her true form. And just as they are about to kill Nori, the stranger wakes up. And then as soon as he attacks them with his powers, The other two fly away, but not the main witch. The main witch attacks the stranger instead and quickly overpowers him with her wand and starts beating him brutally, causing the stranger to fall unconscious. Then Nori's friend diverts her attention and Nori immediately disappears with the stick. But the witch now takes fire with her magic and burns all their hiding places to ashes, causing them all to fall. But then Nori brings the stick to the stranger and says to it, "I know you're good, so help us." And then the stranger sees that all the Harfoots have fallen down and the witch is about to kill them. So the stranger quickly grabs his wand and absorbs all of their fire, making the witches realize that it isn't Sauron, but a good one. And then the stranger burns them all and sends them back to the same dark shadows from where they came. But after this, they see that their leader will not be able to survive because he is badly injured. That is why he said, "I want to see the rising sun for the last time." Whereas here, we see that these people melt the knife of Galadriel. And then finally, after mixing all the metals, mithril metal is also added to it, which starts creating a superpower, after which they quickly divide it into 3 equal parts and start carving it, and putting the same 3 magical stones in them. And soon they combine all of these and create a superpower, which they created in the form of 3 rings. And that is why the name of this entire series is also the Rings of Power. While here we see that Nori decides to leave her people and her family and go with the stranger, because now she has found her purpose, because she really isn't made to live in these forests. That's why she goes out into the world with the stranger. And now we learn that this stranger is none other than Gandalf, a great wizard whose mission is to protect the world from darkness. But now the darkness has returned, because we see that Halbrand, that is Sauron, now comes directly from Galadriel to the south, that is Mordor, which has now become the Orc Empire. And the real master of these orcs is Sauron. But why did Sauron help the elves to make the 3 rings? Was there some trick of Sauron in this? Does it mean that Sauron already wanted the elves to make the rings? But now that Sauron has returned, but Adar hates him. But why? We will get to know the answers to all these questions in its next part, because till now we have finished its season 1 in 3 parts. But before the next part, press like and share this video, and fill the comments with its part 4, because only through your response will our underrated channel reach more people. Therefore, please write your valuable opinion in the comment. That's my explanation for the American TV series, The Rings of Power, Part 2. So guys, what do you think about the series? Write in the comment, subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.